Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon. In the last part we started off Nightmare Mode and now we're actually going to go finish off the game because, as mentioned before, due to my abridged nature for these latter two playthroughs, there's not going to be much new that we're going to be seeing here. I will say that, like I briefly mentioned last part, the latter half of the game goes through quite a bit more quickly than the early half of the game on Nightmare Mode. Partially because, for one, there's not much more exploration you're going to be doing at this point because you've already been through these stages with all four characters. But also, just due to the fact of... It's the whole thing of when you beat a game once and then go back through it again, you're going to beat it faster because you know what you're doing better. So, going through this, you've already beaten the game at least once, so you don't have to worry about too much. With that said, let's talk about Andrealthus here. The biggest change to this boss on Nightmare Mode is an attack that actually never showed up in either of my previous fights, the Wind Tunnel. When the pylons here have been distributed onto the platform, if the boss is on the left side, they'll produce a long tunnel of wind a la Storm Tornado from Mega Man X1. It doesn't do damage, but it forces the player backwards, either trying to get you off the stage, or into one of the little pylon things. In Nightmare Mode, it has gust of wind underneath it, so you can actually not try to slide or duck underneath it. Otherwise, I think everything else about this boss is completely the same, barring damage totals. If you take more damage in Nightmare Mode, I've actually never been too certain about that. I don't think you do. Either way, still one of my favorite bosses in the game, easily one of the most kinetic and best looking in the game. And again, seizure warning for the desperation attack. I'm at least glad that they have harder boss patterns in this game, though, because if you had to play through the game so many times and the bosses never changed at all, yeah, you'd learn them very well, but you'd also just get tired of fighting them over and over and over again. Stage 6, more of the same, really. Nothing too much different here. I do take a new pathway during this stage, though, that I can take thanks to Alfred, and it's technically the shorter one of the two that I could have taken back in the first playthrough. I just didn't because I was wanting to keep the lightning power up more so over the swapping out for Frost Caliber. And that mostly just comes into my playstyle. Once I get my hands on the thing I really like, I don't like to get rid of it. And be it in like these kind of Castlevania games, Ninja Gaiden, so on and so forth. If I find a sub-weapon I'm absurdly comfortable with, I don't like to change off of it. Even in Mega Man games, if a power-up is, or if a special weapon's really that useful, I don't like to not use it, if that makes sense. Outside of Metal Blades, I actually don't like spamming that one. I'm a quick boomerang user. Gauntlet is still as important to get as ever, by the way. I also figured this playthrough I'd take this pathway just so you can see what's up here. And it is pretty good if you're new to the game because there's a relatively easy to get one up here. You just need to make sure you're wise about using your power-ups to get to it. I think every stage has at least one up hidden within it somewhere, but either it's one you can only reach on Nightmare Mode, or it requires such a specific path to get that it might not even be worth it, honestly. And even then, as you may have figured out by watching this LP, based off points alone, getting extra lives in this game is so easy you don't really need to worry about it. And that's partnered with the fact of, technically speaking, every life has 4 lives nested within it. So, like, technically, yeah, I have 8 lives right now, but between 3 characters, I have 24 health bars. That's a lot. Either way, here's where the big difference sets in. After I grab some ammunition, just because I'm feeling a bit low. Let's take care of that lava. Only in me destroying that now do I realize that that reminds me a lot of Junkman's stage from Mega Man 7 if you bring in Frostman's weapon. Because you use that to get part of the rush panels, I think, in that game. I haven't played 7 in a long time. Probably since the LP, actually, now that I think about it. And that was a good 3 or 4 years ago now. Maybe 5. Remember, it was long enough ago that I used Laura's theme from Silent Hill 2 is the speed up theme for the spot for the boss rush, and that shows what I was playing a lot of at the time, because I really like Silent Hill 2. I'll get to that series one day. There's a couple things I need to research about it and practice with it first, because my big horror series in the PlayStation 1 was always Resident Evil. The rooms with the iron mains on the ceiling, I always felt a bit tense in, not only just due to the fact that there's knockback near bottomless pits, but there's always the fact of I can never remember if the iron maiden that's shaking above me is going to be one that drops an enemy, or one that just falls flat on my face and makes me go, ow. Mind you, at the end of the day, it's not much of a distinction to make, you just kind of run past them all the same, but you know what I mean. Either way, it's time for Bloodless, and as you can see, I died, Miriam died off screen, so I have to do this the hard way with Gebel and Alfred, which means I don't actually have a good attack pattern. Makes me wish I had kept the lightning sub-weapon, but you get to see just what having the wrong party can do to you. Because certain characters are definitely better suited for boss fights, others for stages, and it all depends on your setup. And if you're not careful, you could very easily just make yourself such a bad party layout that you're going to have a rough time during boss fights. But that said, thank you, Gebel, for having a way to attack upwards. As I briefly mentioned, I think during our first or second run-through, if you have upwards of 15 ammo, I actually recommend saving it for the Desperation attack here, because the way I've heard you're easily able to avoid it is by being Gebel in bat form and then just flying to a certain part of the screen and then dashing through the skull. Yeah, I've never done it, but I've heard it's the best way to take care of that Desperation attack. Also, I've played this game a lot, but I've never noticed either the heart pattern on the windows in the background, the scrolling sky in the windows, or how surprisingly detailed that background is with the curtains. Huh. Honestly, this game's sprite work is fantastic. Especially, I really like the boss designs. I think they did a really good job of transferring the designs from 2D to 3D, too. Because, like I said, most of the bosses in this game are in Ritual of the Night. I just need to get to that game so I can experience their new patterns. Or, unless they're the same pattern, in which case I'd laugh my ass off. I doubt they are, though. Yeah. I think this is also one of the few Desperation attacks you can get hit multiple times by. Again, though, I don't think it can ever kill you, so you're fine there. And with that, we're on to Stage 7. Like with Stage 4, not much is gonna be new in this stage. I've taken more or less every notable pathway. There's a couple of side ones I haven't taken, but I'm just gonna get through the stage, really. With that said, again, the most important thing to do here is get the armor, so make sure Miriam lives to the second screen, or third screen. Either that or Gebel. Also, another nice little detail that I mentioned back during the Zangetsu solo thing, about the moon slowly becoming more and more full as you progress. In this playthrough, on Nightmare mode, the moon is slowly and slowly getting closer to its new moon phase. Either way, Bothane's biggest difference is speed, without a doubt. Every single one of his attacks is just plain faster. With that said, his little electric blades he also shoots out when he's on top of the corner of the wall in the top right. He now shoots out 3 of those compared to the prior 2. Yeah, but otherwise, I think every single one of his differences is just a pure speed increase. He electrizes the floor faster. He does that attack faster. He gets that beam out more quickly. I think even his Desperation attack is a slight bit faster. To the point where I think to dodge it, you're supposed to now just jump straight up instead of jumping off the platform. But I don't really care about dodging that too much because I have more than enough lives usually by this point. Something I actually didn't realize until I looked at the 3D model for this guy, by the way, is that he has a horse head on his left shoulder on the right side of the sprite. That's on the left right now because he's facing right. I don't know why they did that. I guess it's cool. Mind you, he could also just be based off some Solomonian demon or some shit like that. I think a lot of the demon names in this are based off something from the various mythologies. But that's stage 7. Throughout this point in the game, it's basically just the last game but harder at this point. Which, you know, is cool. But stage 8 is a little bit different, to say the least. Mostly because we're not going to stage 8. Welcome to stage 9, Fallen Moon's Requiem. Nightmare mode exclusive final stage because, remember, this is a sequel to the original playthrough. The Gremory is dead. We're here for something else. And this is probably one of my favorite stages in the game, if not my favorite, period. Because the way it works is that each of us are splitting up and we're going to go along a pathway suited to our individual abilities. This is just a good use of each character's individual moveset because they place enemies in such a way that they have the tools to deal with them that none of the other characters really would. With that said, I still recommend the usual sub-weapons if you can grab them. Try and grab the triple daggers, particularly towards the end of the section. If you can get the lightning one here at all, I guess. I'd overall actually recommend the Ring of Fire for this section. And well, Gebel's Gebel. He can't exactly do much. An interesting thing about the stage, too, is that every enemy in it is a re-sprite of a prior enemy. Like, that's the Scissor Man from stage 6. Coming up at the end of each of the individual sections is a re-sprite of one of the little mini-bosses. Like, in this case, I think it's the Demon from the original stage 8. Actually, I think this one's completely unique. It's largely effective. Most of these mini-bosses don't have much HP, as you can tell. But still, you're going to want to treat them a bit differently than normal enemies. For Alfred's section, I just recommend using the fire ring and then sprinting like a madman. Because that's the best way to get through this without getting hit, because there are a lot of projectiles falling from the sky in this section. I also don't know how you're supposed to reach that. Actually, no, I guess you're supposed to use Frost Caliber and maybe freeze one of the ghost-type enemies. But I got better things to do. Yeah, like, you can grab the lightning balls there. But honestly, for this section, Fire Ring is all you're gonna need, because it makes it a non-issue in terms of the enemies. The jumps can be a bit of an issue, don't get me wrong, considering what's below us is instant death. But if you've gotten this far, honestly, you can handle yourself, no problem. Alfred also gets the easiest re-sprite because he has the... I guess I could call it a Doulahan? The enemy we've seen in a couple stages that swings like a little mace around that looks like a helmet and then flings it back at you. Only this time, it's themed after a samurai because, you know, Zangetsu's meant to be Japanese. If you can't tell by his name, general design mentality, a lot of other things. Gebel's section is, without a doubt, the shortest, and also the easiest because you can spam your little Metamorphosis dash and completely nullify any of the actual stage. You have a re-sprite of the little succubus enemies from stage 6 here as well, but just hitting them in midair completely nullifies anything they can do to you. Also, this might be my favorite stage song in the game. Like, I know I like a lot of this game's music, but this just is kick-ass. I have no idea what that enemy's meant to be. It just looks weird. But with that, we're done with the actual stage portion of the stage. It's short, but it's sweet. We even got a weird little inverse grand staircase here. I don't know why, I just find this kind of funny. With that said, we're coming up on the final checkpoint in Supply Room. In here, you're gonna have a lot of lamps to break. Two of them contain ammo. The one on the far right contains an extra life. I'd only recommend giving the sub-weapons to Miriam, though. Mostly because the final boss is only fought with Miriam. Gebel and Alfred are out of commission and will only come into effect during certain attacks. Like this one, Zangetsu jumps off screen, slams the sword into the ground, and then makes a giant energy wave go across the ground. Gebel acts as your platform of safety here. In between each main attack, Zangetsu is going to be doing between 1 and 3 different dashes across the floor, and from what he does there depends on his, well, what attack he decides to use. He could use that attack we just saw there, where he could fling his talismans on the ground, and then just makes a gigantic crescent shockwave. Or Alfred could jump over to the opposite side and cause a flyer, use his firing ability to make your shield. Stay on your toes in this fight, because it is active, and it is honestly hard. This is the hardest fight in the game, but it's also my pure favorite. If you're patient and you keep an eye on what's going on, this fight shouldn't cause you much issue. My biggest complaint is that the difference between what you should do when it comes to the talisman attack, whether or not you should head towards him or away from him, depending on if Alfred decides to move, is you need to stay in the middle of the screen to see if Alfred's about to jump or not, so you can decide whether or not you need to attack. When he's out of HP, you have one last section where you and Gebel have to work together and protect Alfred while he prepares, let's just say, a super spell. If any of the fire gets to you, Zangetsu's desperation attack goes through and you're dead instantly. Thus, the new era of darkness came to an end. However, their failure to save their ally's life weighed heavily upon their hearts. In the end, they only had enough power to save his soul. May this land and his soul know true peace. And that's the true ending of the game. And that, in general, is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. If you like Castlevania, particularly Castlevania 1 or especially Castlevania 3, you'll love this game. It's got great stage design, great boss fights, fun characters to play with, enough unique differences between them, and unique sub-weapons to make each one a very different playstyle. It's just overall such a well-crafted game. Which, mind you, Insta Creates puts out a lot of those, now that I think about it. Sometimes their storytelling ain't the best. I'm looking at the Gunvolt games in particular. But they know how to make action-packed platformers. If you want to play this, it's on more or less all of the modern consoles. PS4, 360, Xbox One, Steam is what I played for this. And I heavily recommend it. I still haven't played Ritual of the Night, as I mentioned a couple times, and I really should get to that. And from what I'm aware, this is completely like alternate universe what if, just to tide over the players between the meeting of the Kickstarter and the release of Ritual of the Night. But it's overall an extraordinarily solid game. I heavily recommend it. With that said, I'd say the best way to play the game is just a normal playthrough. Because while I think the final stage and the Zangetsu boss fight are fantastic, Nightmare mode comes off so repetitive compared to normal mode that playing them all in a row feels kind of weak. And the Zangetsu solo runs are interesting enough, but feel kind of lacking at the same time. I'm not exactly sure the chances of this, but if this or Ritual of the Night ever got sequels, I would love to see a Castlevania Bloodlines to this one's Castlevania's 3. That could be really interesting. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then. Zangetsu's soul remained behind, where it was driven to the afterlife. We'll get to that game at some point too. Don't you worry.